Hey everyone, it's Tara. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with my June wrap-up video. For anybody that might be wondering, I'm drinking Chardonnay again. It's Toscana Trebbiano Chardonnay, made in Italy. It was on sale at my liquor store, so why not? As you can tell, I've drank a decent chunk of it already. So the month of June I thought was a really good month for me. All of the books that I read I really enjoyed. Most of them I think were 4 stars or higher. I think there was only one, maybe 2 that were like 3.5 stars. So without further ado, let's get into my June wrap up. Oh, that's gonna fall. It'll be fine. So the first book I finished in June was The Dinner List by Rebecca Searle. I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a good story. There were just some things, especially at the end, that were kind of lacking for me. So The Dinner List follows Sabrina. She is celebrating her 30th birthday with a dinner party, and the attendants of that party are the people from her, the 5 people. If you could have a meal with 5 people living or dead, who would that be? Those 5 people were Audrey Hepburn, one of her professors from college, her estranged father, her best friend, and one of her ex-boyfriends. The bulk of the story follows her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Tobias. And you have 2 different timelines. You have the dinner party, so the present time dinner party, and you have their love story, like the beginning up to their relationship ending. And everyone else was just kind of an extra character in the story. Very minor, didn't really play a big part in it. So the ending left something to be desired. I think it kind of ended on a cliffhanger, like what happens. But overall, it was a cute story. I enjoyed it, gave it 3.5 stars. After The Dinner List, I read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Loved this book. I am on the Taylor Jenkins Reid bandwagon. Love her. I need to read the rest of her books. I'm a huge fan now. Gave this 5 stars. I cried. It was so good. So After I Do follows Ryan and Lauren. They have been together for 11 years, married for 6 years, and their marriage is kind of falling apart. They kind of realize that they don't like each other anymore. They don't even know if they're still in love. And so they decide to take a year with no contact and kind of reassess the situation after a year. And so the story mainly follows Lauren and how she is dealing with that. So Lauren kind of has to discover who she is without Ryan, because so much of her adult life, most of her adult life, because they met in college, has been her and Ryan. I think this book touches on the fact that marriage isn't always sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies. Like, there's going to be hard parts in a marriage. There's going to be times when you can't stand your spouse. And as a newlywed, I thought this was a great book to read to kind of illustrate that. I loved it. It was such an amazing book. I was crying at the end. It's so good. Another great book by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I'm sure you will see more of Taylor Jenkins Reid. After I Do, I read The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This was a buddy read I did with Tia at Tia and All the Books. I will leave a link to her channel down below. Tia's amazing. Definitely check her out. So I loved this too. I gave this 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. I loved it more than I loved The Nightingale. In The Great Alone, you follow Lenny and her parents Cora and Ernst. This is set in the 1970s. Ernst is a Vietnam vet who was a prisoner of war, and he is having a hard time coping with being back. He has PTSD, but at that time there's not really a name for that. and he can't hold down a job. They're struggling to pay the bills, and then Ernst gets a letter in the mail from the father of one of his fellow soldiers who unfortunately passed away in Vietnam. And this soldier left Ernst his house and land in Alaska. So Ernst decides to move his family to Alaska because at least they will own the land outright and maybe they can better their lives. They get to Alaska. This house is more of a shack, no running water, no electricity. There's an outhouse. It's like a one-room shack with a loft for Lenny to sleep in. And they decide to, we have no choice now. We're here. We're going to make it work. Ernst is trying to cope with his PTSD and he turns to drinking. And drinking is not good. When Ernst drinks, he gets violent, and when he gets violent, he tends to take it out on Cora. I love the relationship between Cora and Lenny, even though sometimes Lenny has to kind of be the adult in that relationship because Cora does not want to see the bad qualities that Ernst is displaying and how dangerous Ernst can be. I love that relationship. I loved this book. I know that some people have said that this was not a good representation of PTSD. I think it's not a good representation of PTSD if you're only looking at it as PTSD. But Ernst is coping with his PTSD by drinking, and so it's PTSD and alcoholism combined. I think if you look at it that way and realize that it's not the PTSD alone that he's dealing with, it's a PTSD and how he is trying to cope with the PTSD, and that's not a good combination. I think it's a very good representation of that. It's a great historical fiction novel. I'm looking forward to reading more of Kristen Hanna's work as well. After The Great Alone, I read China Rich Girlfriend, which is the sequel to Crazy Rich Asians. I gave that 3.5 stars. I can't go into much of the synopsis of China Rich Girlfriend without spoiling part of Crazy Rich Asians, but it picks up 3 years after. I think it's 2 or 3 years after Crazy Rich Asians, and you're following Nick and Rachel's next chapter. Nick's mother finds Rachel's biological father, whom she didn't know in Crazy Rich Asians. And so basically Rachel gets the opportunity to get to know her biological father and his now family. You do get more of Astrid and Michael's relationship and how they are doing 3 years later. Things have taken a turn for them, but it's up for debate whether it's a turn for the better or for the worse. I enjoyed the story. My biggest complaint is there were a lot of characters, and some of them were in Crazy Rich Asians, but they were very minor characters in Crazy Rich Asians, and some of them were just brand new. And so trying to keep track of all of those, there's a lot of characters in Crazy Rich Asians just to begin with, but they were at least all related to Nick somehow, and you could kind of keep it straight because they were together all the time. And that was a little bit confusing. Overall, I don't think it really deterred from the story, and I've heard that the third book, Rich People Problems, kind of ties, I think it's called Rich People Problems, ties everything together, and so I definitely want to read that so I can kind of see how this all wraps up. I think China Rich Girlfriend might be a little bit of a middle book syndrome case. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Crazy Rich Asians much more. Then I read Julie and Julia. I did this as a buddy read with my mom. My sisters also kind of read it with us. I gave this, I'm between a 3.75 and 4 stars. This follows Julie Powell. She is about ready to turn 30. She's kind of stuck in a dead-end job in a crappy apartment in New York. And she's just kind of in a rut. And so her and her husband, Eric, come up with this idea that she's going to cook her way through Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking, and she's going to blog about it. So she gives herself a year to cook her way through the book. Her blog is separate from this. So this is more of a memoir of her cooking through it, but it's not like the blog entries. So I think you get more of what was going on in her life in the book, and then the blog entries that she wrote back in 2002 are like more just, oh, this is what I made and this was my experience making it. So this book was not like a cohesive story. It was kind of like little snippets here and there. There were some points in some parts in this where I was legit laughing out loud. When she is cooking the lobster, oh my gosh, it is hilarious. Julie Powell is not afraid of dropping the F-bomb. So if you are offended by the F-bomb, you might want to stay away from this. She actually makes comments in her book. Like, I guess some of her blog readers at the time said, do you really need to swear so much? And she was like, if you don't like my swearing, don't read my blog. I don't mind it. I wasn't bothered by it. But if you are offended by a certain curse word, you might not like this, because she drops it a lot. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. Last but not least, oh my gosh, this was so good. With the Fire and High by Elizabeth Acevedo. 5 stars. Loved it. Only reason I put it down is because I was literally falling asleep while I was reading it, because it was so late and I was just so tired. But I wanted to keep reading this book. It was so good. Loved it. So this definitely lives up to the hype that I've heard on BookTube. So this follows Imani. She is a teenage mom in her senior year of high school. Imani has this knack for cooking. She has what her grandmother calls magic hands. When her school offers a culinary arts class, Imani decides to join it. But she runs into some problems in class because her teacher wants her to follow each recipe to the T, and Imani would read a recipe and say, oh, I should add this to it, and while the food would be delicious, her teacher was like, but that's not the assignment that I gave you. So she kind of struggles with that. Imani is always prioritizing her daughter Emma, or baby girl, above everything else. The supporting characters in this book, Angelica, Malachi, Buela, her grandmother, are just so good. This book demonstrates what family really is. And family is not necessarily the family that you were born into or your biological family. It's the people that stick by you and help you out when times get tough. And times for Imani are tough. Imani is trying to balance school, work, and motherhood, and also kind of nurturing this passion that she has. And it is so inspiring to me. I think this is such an inspirational book, and Imani is such a good character for young adults to read about and to look up to. I really enjoyed this book. Loved it. Highly recommend it. Read it. It's inspiring. Those are all of the books that I read in June. I am really pleased with the reading month that I did have. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Let me know down below what books you read in June. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books if you have read them. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.